Hi guys, welcome back to In Case of Econ Struggles, and welcome to another causal inference struggle. Today we're going to be talking about negative weights in an instrumental variable regression. Specifically, we are going to talk about the relationship between the amount of defiers that we have and how that can affect our IV estimate. So timestamps are below if you would like to jump around, but let's get right into it. In the last video, when we talked about types of people in an IV, we talked about compliers, defiers, always takers, and never takers. At the very end of that video, we saw this example where our Z or our instrument was a lottery for whether or not you can adopt a cat. X is whether or not you actually adopt a cat, and Y is your stress level from 0 to 10. And we said in that example that maybe 50% of people in the world are compliers. They have an average treatment effect of adopting a cat of -1. 49% of people in the world are defiers, and they have an average treatment effect of -2. So we saw just from these numbers that we know that the effect of adopting a cat on your stress level should be negative. Adopting a cat should make you less stressed. And then we went through the math to see what happens with this example. So we knew that our instrumental variable estimate was just the effect of Z on Y over the effect of Z on X. We calculated the effect of Z on X to be the average X given that Z equals 1 minus the average X given that Z equals 0. We worked through the math and we saw that we got 0.01 because of the fact that these defiers show up over here, because when Z is 0, the defiers have a treatment status of 1 because they're defiers. And when Z equals 1, the compliers are the ones who have a treatment status of 1 because they are compliers. Then we moved on to talk about the effect of Z on Y. And these defiers caused us to have a -2 over here for the average Y given that Z equals 0, the average treatment effect given that Z equals 0. And so we ended up with a positive number, a positive 0.48 for the effect of Z on Y. And we calculated that the average treatment effect of adopting a cat on your stress level was actually to raise it by almost 5 points, even though we knew that the average treatment effect for both compliers and defiers was negative. So let's dive in a little more into why this happens, the assumption that's violated, and then again that relationship between defiers and our IV estimate. The assumption that's violated here, we talked about it last time, it's just the assumption that there are no defiers, but more generally this is called monotonicity. Monotonicity means that the instrument affects the treatment in the same direction for everyone. So maybe for this cat lottery, it makes everyone slightly more likely to adopt a cat or not at all more likely to adopt a cat. But the instrument cannot make some people less likely to adopt a cat. It's got to push everyone towards treatment in the same direction. It's got to work one way. That is the definition of monotonicity. And if you have this monotonicity assumption get violated, that means you have defiers. And if you have defiers, you're going to get negative weights. If you have negative weights, your IV estimate is going to be all screwed up, which is why we just assume generally that we don't have defiers. What's happening between these defiers and the estimate? How can I look at this and find a relationship between the amount of defiers I have and my IV estimate? Well, here is the IV estimate we found initially. It's 4.8. What happens if I crank up the average treatment effect for defiers and make it even more negative so that having a cat is just even more effective on stress level for defiers? Well, if I crank up that ATE for defiers to -3, you can see what's going to happen here is this is now going to be a -3. I'm going to get 1.47 here. When I take the difference, I'm going to get 0.97, and so I'm going to get 9.7 as my IV estimate, which is even more wild, but notice that this difference here is 4.9. Why is it 4.9? Because I get plus 0.1 for each defier of my 49% of defiers, so it's linear. The amount of defiers I have will tell me that if I increase the ATE by 1, I am going to increase the IV estimate in the wrong direction by 4.9. So hopefully this just gives you a little more background on why defiers in an IV estimate are bad, why negative weights in an IV estimate caused by defiers are bad, and sort of the relationship between the amount of defiers you have and your IV estimate. If this was helpful, make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time for another case of Econ Struggles.